This is SME OnPoint. Thank you so much for staying with SABC News. My name is Liabo Setho. A little later in this segment, I'll sit down with Kumaran Padayachee, the CEO of Spartan SME Finance. We'll chat about finance opportunities and how you can take advantage of the COVID-19 crisis as an entrepreneur. But first, our featured business of the week is a beneficiary of government's Black Industrialist program. And Malvilox is the first and only 100% Black-owned roof tile solutions that is committed to skills development and job creation. This is Malvilox's story, edited by Daz Jalaser. Olani Kubega recognized an opportunity to be a player in the manufacturing sector. This is even though the sector has still not fully recovered from the effects of the 2008-2009 global economic crisis. That did not deter him from venturing into the tile and roofing manufacturing space.
One had to identify what could be a sustainable manufacturing business, because manufacturing is very important, as a developing country, and we do need to increase South Africa's manufacturing capacity in the first instance, and also to contribute towards job creation, also towards creating exports, and South Africa as an exporting country.
Malvilox manufactures, supplies and installs total roofing solutions, the first 100% Black-owned business in the concrete roof tile industry. Like many others, Kubega says it was tough to secure funding for this plant, which now employs more than 40 people. Malvilox on average produces about 20,000 tiles a day, servicing mostly the social housing market.
We were able to build a competent staff member. Over 90% of our staff members here were unemployed. In fact, each time we came here, when we were buying the place, they started standing at the gate there. So 90% of the staff have never worked. Today we have such a competent staff. There's harmony. As you can see, people work here independently. I've just shown the supervisor of the truss plant. When we started here, he was a forklift driver today. So what makes this business special? It's really its people.
Kubega is encouraging aspiring entrepreneurs to also explore opportunities in the manufacturing sector so as to revive it.
Never venture into an area which you do not have expertise on your own. Ensure that you can find a suitable partner with many years of experience, because manufacturing really, is really not a spaza shop. We went out of our way to find a partner who's got 34 years experience, who's our chief operating officer, and we had an intellectual property agreement for skills transfer. So it is important that you have the necessary skills and know-how that ensures success.
The world, and particularly businesses, are on tenterhooks, worried about where the COVID-19 pandemic will lead to next and the impact this will have on small businesses. He says this is a crisis that should not be wasted.
We must be very creative and innovative as a country to ensure that as the world recovers, that we are in front, as an export-oriented country.
So as the COVID-19 continues to spread in the country, confirmed cases now stand at 24. But what are the downstream effects for SMEs, and as the ripple effects keeps on coming, and what does it mean for your small business? And as I promised earlier on, Kumaran Padayachee, the CEO of Spartan SME, has joined me to chat further about this. So thank you so much for being here on SME OnPoint. I really welcome you. This is really uncertain times, but that number, 24, really, it's time to panic, isn't it? And when you're a small business, Kumaran, what do you think?
So yes, the human condition, we will panic, but this is the time for calm heads and from a business perspective, because when we are frantic and frenetic and anxious, we tend not to think clearly, do we? As human, and then as a business, you're going to be making the wrong moves. So no doubt the situation, there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknowns. The situation is clearly a real threat. It's not something you can, laugh off. Perhaps there's some over-panicking happening, but it is seriously a real threat. And 24 is a number, but if you look at what's happening globally, these things are having that long, fat tail that's increasing. And so what effect does this have as the governments around the world and organizations try and deal with it? they're trying to, what I'm seeing is that they're trying to flatten that curve to delay it. And they're doing that through distancing. So there's policies in place to stopping certain imports. It's affecting supply and affecting demand. So for an SME, when your demand and your supply is affected, in most instances, that's when you're in a real fix, and there's more ripples coming if you think about it.
There's an interesting tweet that I came across yesterday. I'm hoping that my colleagues will put it up. It's from Langa Mangele. And he talks about how policy should now, in fact, we should be looking at the Treasury. He says, I think that Treasury should start preparing an SME stimulus of some sort. This is not panic policy. It's being proactive with respect to the effects of COVID-19. Do you agree with this?
I agree, and there's a but. The agreement is that he's advocating not panic, but to be proactive. I'm in agreement with that. There's stimulus things being talked about around the world because this will decimate some SMEs. The but here is, I wonder how much of bullets we have left as a South African government, the South African economy for this. And so it's on the one hand, we will look expectantly to see if there's something that can happen stimulus-wise. But I think we also need to think independently as small businesses to be on our own and shouldn't be reliant on that. Because I think government's hands are tied largely, We're in a recession. We already, we're in a
We saw that some of the economies have already started cutting their interest rates, for instance, and we have the MPC coming up next week. There's been talks around, even here in the newsroom, about whether this is not perhaps the perfect time for them to cut by even 50 basis points to especially help to cushion the SMEs.
Yes, so I think interest rate, let's be clear, in my view, the interest rate cut will help cushion, put some extra surplus in the pockets of SMEs and households, but I don't think it's going to stimulate demand and buying and all of that, because if people are fearful because of their health issues, that's still going to constrain them from demanding and buying and shopping and all of that. But no doubt, interest rate cut, a sizable one, will be a welcome reprieve.
Tell us about what Spartan does and how SMEs can come to your finance institution at this time particularly.
Sure. So our business, Spartan SME Finance, we only do debt funding. So we don't invest or take equity. It's pure loan capital. We don't deal with startups. It's more established SMEs, the ones that are in a growth curve and a growth cycle. And we will do working capital over 1 to 3 months or 6 to 12, or long-term capital from 1 to 5 years, whether it be for a plant like this funding that you had seen, or working capital buffers for projects. And we tend to turn around in approximately 10 days. Our average loan size is about 4.5 to 5 million rand. We've seen a positive effect coming from the preferential procurement that I'd like to add, where there's been a lot of stimulus happening there in terms of spending.
Kumaran, thank you so much for making time to speak to us on SME OnPoint. I hope that our viewers will also go through your website to see if they could qualify for that loan that SME Spartan Finance is availing to you as an SME and also as an entrepreneur. But listen, this is all that we have time for this week. I know that Nastasia Arendse is already getting ready for her books on point, and that is coming up after the break.